Sahana bhavatu Sahanau bhunaktu Sahaviryam karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yuktah karma phalam tyaktva Shantimapnoti niḥśreyasakarāvubhau. Ayuktah kāmakārena phale sakto nibadhyate. Lord Krishna gave us here a very simple lesson in bondage and liberation. Avatro again. Karma phalam tyaktva niḥśreyasakarāvubhau shantimapnoti. How to attain peace in our life. And peace also is equal to happiness. How to attain peace and happiness in our life, success in our life. Karma phalam tyaktva. So Lord prescribes tyaktva, tyaga, the renunciation. We've been saying that Lord Krishna talks of threefold renunciation in the Bhagavad Gita. The first level of renunciation starts with the karma phalam tyaktva. Giving up the asakti, the attachment with karma phala. What is meant is that may you not identify yourself with the outcome of the action. May you not judge yourself by the outcome of the action. When you perform an action, there will be an outcome. When karma is there, karma phala is going to be there. But what we do is we judge ourselves based on the outcome of the action. First of all, we brand the outcome as success and failure, which is our subjective perception of the outcome. And further, we judge ourselves based on that outcome. First, we judge the outcome as success, that is our judgment. And then we judge ourselves as successful, or the outcome is judged as failure, and we judge ourselves as failure. The self-judgment that I am successful, I am failure, both of these disturb the tranquility of the mind. Although one may feel that, feeling that I am successful is desirable, but what is meant by happiness is a tranquility of the mind. Samatvam yoga uchyate. The tranquility of the mind. And the mind is poised, composed, tranquil, contented, happy. So that is the sattvic mind. When I am happy or rejoice the success, that is the rajasi mind, rajas mind. When I brand myself failure and suffer grief, it is the tamas mind. When I am tranquil, I maintain poise of my mind. I am graceful both in success as well as failure. Because the karma yogi identifies himself with karma. and therefore maintains his attitude while performing karma. Yukta means a yogi. It is said who performs action as an offering to Ishvara in the spirit of contribution. That is sattvic. And therefore, yukta karma phalam tyaktva yukta. A yogi, an aspirant or a mumukshu who has this right attitude of performing action in the spirit of worship as an offering to Ishvara, who feels a sense of gratitude within himself, feels that he has been blessed by Lord, he has been given plenty, and therefore it is his pleasure to make an offering to Ishvara. This is the spirit that is conducive to the tranquility of the mind. Shantimāpnoti niḥśreyasakarāvubhau. This tranquility that starts with the right attitude, which is karmayoga. As sattva grows, we call it antahakaṛṣuddhi, the mind gains purified. Because rajas and tamas are not encouraged. Sattva shuddhi, vividisha, a desire for knowledge, guru upasadanam, approaching the teacher, subjecting oneself, shravanam, manam, nididhyasanam, jnanam, jnananistha, and naishtikim shantim. A peace arising from the abidance in one's own self, which is ultimate, which even is beyond sattva. Ayuktah kama karana. So this is how we choose for ourselves a path of peace, path of happiness, path of success, path of freedom. Ayuktah kama karana phale sakto nibadhyate. Who is ayukta, not a yogi but a bhogi, who looks upon an action as an opportunity for self-gratification. So his agenda is self-gratification, sense gratification, emotional gratification, intellectual gratification, ego gratification. When that gratification comes, as we said, there is happiness, which is rajasic happiness, which is counterpart in terms of unhappiness. Happiness, which is a counterpart of unhappiness, is also nothing but a name of unhappiness only. Whereas happiness that comes as sattva has no counterpart of unhappiness. So thus, happiness which is counterpart unhappiness, the happiness comes from outside of myself, where there is dependence. The happiness that comes by right attitude, by the spirit of renunciation, by the spirit of offering, contribution, is a happiness that wells up from within myself, which is with freedom, accompanied with freedom. The path of freedom, the path of bondage. As a result now, Lord now describes the saṃnyāsa in the primary sense, which is vidvat saṃnyāsa. Saṃnyāsa by virtue of renunciation, by virtue of knowledge. What's the nature of knowledge? Karmani akarmayaḥ paśyed. The knowledge that I am actionless self. So that is the ultimate renunciation which takes place. In the process of karma yoga, etc., there is an effort to renounce. I renounce my rajas tamas. I renounce the attachment and aversion. I renounce the craving for gratification. And I deliberately embrace the attitude of worship, renunciation, contribution. Shantimāpnoti niḥśreyasakarāvubhau. As a result, one attains that abiding peace, which is the nature of the self. So now Lord Krishna described in several verses this wise person who has attained the abiding peace, who is a saṃnyāsī in the primary sense. But saṃnyāsa is not the description of a lifestyle. It is not the description of any external signs such as the color of the robes, etc. It is a description of the wisdom. The saṃnyāsī ultimately is one who knows renunciation as the nature of the self. The reason why Lord Krishna prescribes renunciation, tyaga, as a means of self-knowledge is because tyaga or renunciation or peace is the nature of self. And therefore, when I perform an action with the attitude of yoga, I am acting in harmony with my true nature. That is why there is peace. And one who has attained that ultimate peace, Lord Krishna now describes that wise person in the verse number 13. Let us read that. Sarva karmaṇi manasa saṃnyāsyaste sukham vashe navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvanna kārayan. Sarva karmaṇi manasa saṃnyāsya. Having renounced all the actions by mind, which means that Lord Krishna describes saṃnyāsa as a perception of the mind. This person may not appear as a saṃnyāsa, a renunciate in form, meaning that we may be finding performing his duties, performing actions, if that is so governed by his prarabdha or his destiny. Because he has no personal agenda now. Having attained the abiding peace, all his agenda is fulfilled. There is no personal agenda. No, he is totally relaxed. And therefore, he does not resist performing action. He does not seek anything. That I should perform action, should not perform action. I should be in company, I should be alone. Yogarato va, bhogarato va, sangarato va, sangavihīnah. Yasya brahmani ramate chittam, nandati, nandati, nandatyeva. Yogarato va. He may be meditating, totally introvert, in samadhi, absorbed in himself. Bhogaratova, he may appear to be participating in the various activities of life. You may even find him bhoga or enjoying things. Sangaratova, in company with the people. Sangavihīnah, devoid of any company, by himself, alone. These forms are not the description of sannyasa. Yasya brahmani ramate chittam nandati nandati nandatyeva. That's what the Bhajagovindam says. Yasya brahmani ramate chittam. Yasya chittam brahmani ramate. One whose mind abides in Brahman, which is the self. Nandati, nandati, nandatyeva. He rejoices, he rejoices, he rejoices only. 3 times, at any time, at any place, under any conditions, past, present, future, etc. So, manasa saṃnyāsya, viveka buddhya, Bhashyakara says. Viveka buddhi. This is a discriminative knowledge. So, we have the knowledge or experience of the self. But viveka buddhi means being able to separate the self from the non-self. Right now also I have knowledge of myself. Except that the non-self also is mixed up when I call myself a human being, a man, a woman, tall, short, happy, unhappy, in these designations of myself. The I am is a self and happy, unhappy, etc. is a non-self. So this is how my perception of myself is based on this lumping together of self and non-self. When I say I'm a speaker, I'm a hearer, I'm a thinker, I'm a knower, the speaker, hearer, thinker, knower all belong to the upadhi, to the body, mind, sense complex. This is habitual identification. Viveka jnanam. One who is now separated, manasa, in the mind, this separation takes place in the mind. And I am the nature of myself. The speaking, hearing, thinking, knowing, all of these take place in the body, mind, sense complex. Pashyan, shrunvan, sprishan, jigran, performing all the activities. Naiva kanchit karometi, I do not do anything. That I am actionless. So separation of the self from the non-self. That viveka separation is required because without any will on our part, we habitually lump them together. So, manasa viveka buddhya karmadau akarma sandarshanena santyajya. Karmadau akarma sandarshanam. Karmadau. When karma etc. is being performed, akarma sandarshanam, that I am the actionless self. That's the reality about all of us. That's the reality which is known to him. And therefore, pashyan, shrunvan, all these regular activities are taking place. Sarva karmani manasa saṃnyāsya, having renounced all the actions. The self never performs actions anyway. So there cannot be renunciation of action at the level of atma or self. So what is renounced? Renunciation is the sense of doership that arises in me on account of lumping together in Vedantic terms, superimposing the action that takes place in the mind, body, mind, sense complex upon the self. While the speaking takes place at the level of the organ of speech, I call myself a speaker. While the hearing takes place at the level of the organ of hearing, I say I am a hearer. So what is renunciation? The I does not perform any act of speaking, hearing, thinking, knowing anyway. It's only my false notion that I think that I am a speaker here. So not that I have to do something, I just recognize that while pashyan, while seeing, hearing, thinking, knowing takes place, I am actionless. It's in my presence that everything takes place. In all the activities taking place at the level of sense organs, the mind, the intellect, I am the actionless self in whose presence everything takes place. I am the one that enlivens everything. Very conscious presence of the nature of peace and tranquility. So this is the nature of renunciation that Lord Krishna is teaching us. Where renunciation and sannyasa is not an action, it is the perception, the vision, the knowledge of the true nature of the self. And when I have this vision, action does not bind me because the self is never bound anyway. This was also stated in the 4th chapter. Atmantam na karmāṇi nibadnanti dhananjaya yoga saṃnyāsaṃ karmaṇāṃ jñeyaḥ sañchinna samśayam atmantam, in the last verse of the 4th chapter. This is the kind of renunciation, saṃnyāsa, that Lord Krishna wants to teach Arjuna. Have this saṃnyāsa, then there is no resistance to anything. Resistance to something comes. Resistance to an action comes when I think that I am the performer of the action. Then action is branded as punya or papa. Aho vata mahat papam kartum vyavasitavayam. How sad it is, O Lord, that we were ready to kill our relatives for the sake of this happiness and kingdom. Because I look upon myself as a karta, as a doer. And then he wanted to give up the action. Lord Krishna said, yeah, you are renunciate by nature, recognize that. Sarva karmaṇi manasa saṃnyāsya. Thus, saṃnyāsya, having renounced, manasa viveka buddhya, sarva karmaṇi, all the actions. Because all actions take place at the level of non-self anyway. The renunciation of all the actions is simply by not identifying with the non-self, the upari that performs the action. It is true that it is not that the wise person is going to violate any rules. He abides in the truth and thereby his actions are going to be in keeping with truth, but he doesn't perform them. They get performed in his presence. Saṃnyāsyaste sukham vashi. A question arises. The Swami, you say that his agenda is fulfilled, that there is no now agenda left for him in his life. Then why should his body continue when nothing is to be accomplished now? This was not discussed in great detail towards the end of the 4th chapter. That he is a jivan mukta. He is liberated even while living. Which means that his body continues because of the moment of the past karma or the prarabdha. Prarabdha, the destiny. The moment of destiny pushes his body. And therefore, the body will continue to remain, continue to be alive, exist as long as prarabdha is there, which he doesn't resist. We resist perform action very often because action is the burden to us. When kartrutva, the sense of doership is there, then every action involves a certain exertion. I am speaking, I am thinking, I am eating, I am drinking, I am walking. An action always involves some effort and therefore some exertion. And therefore, performing an action is a burden. saṃnyāsyaste sukham vashi. Aste, he exists. He continues to live. Aste, where does he live? Navadvare pure dehi. So sukham aste. He remains, he lives, sukham. So tyaktva vāṅ manah kāya chestah, tyakta vāṅ manah kāya chestah. One who is renounced, meaning one is free from the doership of the actions taking place at the level of body, speech, or the mind. Nirāyāsa prasannachittah. All ayas, all effort is gone. Nirāyāsa, effortless. Self is always effortless. By identifying the self, I also become effortless. Prasannachittah, there is no exertion in mind at all, therefore the mind is completely happy, cheerful. Sukham aste, this person lives happily. But there is no effort, no exertion in his mind. The happiness which is his nature now manifests itself without any obstruction, and therefore he is effortlessly happy. Whatever obstacles are there for the manifestation of the happiness of the self has been removed. The happiness is bubbling up in his heart. Sukham aste, he lives happily. Atmananyatra nivritta bhāshya sarva prayojana iti. There is no prayojanam, no agenda is left. He is free now from any agenda other than himself, because himself, all agenda is fulfilled. Therefore he says, Sukhamaste iti uchyate. He said he lives happily, effortlessly, without exertion. Who is the Vashi? Sukhamaste Vashi Jitendriyaḥ. He is a master of himself. Because when there is no agenda in the mind, when the mind is free from all attractions and aversions, mind is completely abiding in its own self, so shanti apnoti niḥśreyasakarāvubhau, he attains that peace, comes that abiding in the self. Prasannachittah, the mind is placid, pure, cheerful, happy. And that placidity, that clarity, that happiness also pervades in sense organs, in the whole personality. And therefore, his body, mind, sense complex becomes completely relaxed. Vashi, therefore he is the master. He is a master of his personality without any effort, doesn't have to control anything. It is true that an aspirant controls. But the culmination of all this intelligent control is the freedom from the need to control. Vashi jitendriyaḥ yoga yukto vishuddhātma vijitātma jitendriyaḥ. Lord Kṛṣṇa said earlier, vishuddhātma, enjoying the purity of heart. Vijitātma, therefore his mind is automatically supporting him and the control of him, and means is favorable to him. Jitendriyaḥ, sense organs also, everything is at rest. So Vashi, without any effort, he has mastery of his own self. Kva kathamaste? Bhashyakar asks this question. Kva aste? So, Sukham aste Vashi. This wise person enjoying a total self-mastery, aste resides. Kva aste? Where does he reside? Katham aste? How does he reside? So, second line of the verse answers this question. Navadvare pure dehi. This sannyasi renunciate is first called vashi, a master of himself and therefore master of everything. A Swami in the primary sense. And then Lord Krishna says, Dehi. Dehim, Deha plus the in suffix is applied, Deha, asyastita Dehi, one who possesses the body. Navadvare Pure Dehi Aste. He resides in Pure, he resides in a town, in a city. Navadvare Pure Dehi, the city of 9 gates. So this upadhi of ours, the body mind sense complex, is equated to a city. City having 9 gates. In the olden days, the cities were to be gated cities, like we have gated community. The walled city, I should say. And the walled city had gates in strategic places. These gates will be closed at night and will be opened in the morning. When the gates are closed at night, all the interaction stops. In the morning, when the gates are open, the interaction begins. Here also, in this city of the body mind sense complex, all the gates are closed at night when we are sleeping. The gates of all the sense organs are stopped. The organs, sense organs are those from where the interaction takes place. When the mind goes out, the mind goes to different sense objects. The stimuli of the sense objects come into the mind. You can say mind goes out, the sense organ, then sense objects come in. That's during the day. At night, that vyavahara, dealing, transaction, interaction stops. So what are the gates that are closed at night? Navadvare Pure. So scripture describes this city, the body as a city having gates. Sometimes Puram Ekadasha Dvaram. Kathopanishad calls it the city of 11 gates. Here Lord Krishna calls it city of 9 gates. There are 7 gates on our face itself. 2 apertures of hearing, 2 apertures of seeing, 2 apertures of smelling, 1 aperture of mouth, of speaking, eating. So these are 7 gates. There are 7 sense organs, you can say. And the 2 gates of the rejection of fecus and urine. Thus there are total 9 gates. So these are called gates, and then of course the Yoga Shastra elaborately describes how this body is a city. When we talk of city, then we all think of naturally the king who is the master of the city, who rules, the ruler of the city. And then king dwells in his palace. So traditionally heart is said to be the dwelling place of the self. And the mind is said to be the different ways it is described. Sometimes it says that Indriyani paricharakaha, the sense organs are like the paricharaka, like the servants. Buddhi amatyaha, the buddhi, the intellect is like the prime minister. Ahankara yuvarajaha, the ego ahankara is like the crown prince. Manashilpi, the mind is like an architect. So then different aspects of the personality are compared to different elements of a city. And how in the presence of a king the city runs very systematically. They talk of the highways there and the traffic and all kinds of things are described in the Yoga Shastra. So when we visit a city, when we find the city is functioning very smoothly in a harmonious manner, we infer that there must be a king, a ruler must be there. Because of whose presence, the king doesn't have to rule himself. In presence of king, the ruling takes place because the ministers and attendants, all of them know exactly what the king wants. So without the king having to do anything, the whole city functions in a systematic, harmonious manner. So this city of the body, mind, sense complex is functioning in a harmonious manner. That shows that there must be a presiding deity, there must be a king presiding the whole city. That's the Atma, the self. So this is the city having Atma, the Swami, Atma Swamikam. Atma is Swami of the city as a master. And this was the rest of them performing their duties. Thus, there is a lot of similarity between the city and this body, mind, sense complex. That's why it is called a city having 9 gates. Vashi, the ruler, Sukhamaste, abides, resides happily, effortlessly, like a king. And Lord Krishna calls him Dehi, meaning indweller in the body. Deha means body, Dehi means indweller in the body. So his vice person is called Dehi, indweller in the body, indweller of the body. Thereby conveying that he knows that he is indweller of the body and not the body. Indweller is one, like an indweller in a house, a householder has no identification in the house. He knows the house is a dwelling place and I am the dweller of the house. So the wise person knows the body is a dwelling place, I am the dweller of the body, I am not the body. This is the viveka we talked about. The discriminate separation of the self and the non-self. The city is a non-self. Idam shariram kaunte kshetramidya vidhiyate. The 13th chapter, Lord Krishna says, hey Kaunteya, this body is kshetra. It is drishya. It is something that is objectified. It is an Atma, non-self. Etadyo vetitam prahu kshetrajña etadvidah. And one who is aware of this city of the body is kshetrajña, the knower of the self. So there the distinction between kshetra and kshetriya is very clearly described there as a distinction between the knower and the known. Here the distinction is described in a different way as a dwelling and indweller. The knower is different from the known, or the indweller is different from the dwelling. He is dwelling in the body. Navadvare pure dehi asthukamaste. He dwells happily, effortlessly in the palace. You can see the city of the 9 gates in his palace. Kva aste, where does he dwell? In the city. So question is, what's the big deal about this? If a wise person dwells in his body, in the city, we also do that. What is the difference between a wise person and another wise person? If a wise person, ignorant person, both of the Atma always dwells in the city for anybody. Why do you say that a wise person dwells in the city? Don't we also dwell in the city? We do. The only difference is that white person knows that he is indweller. The other wise person does not know that. So if you ask a wise person, where are you sitting? I am sitting in my body. Ask me, Swami, where are you sitting? I am sitting in the chair. So you are sitting in the chair. What's wrong with that? Am I sitting in the chair? It is the body that is sitting in the chair. Is it not so? So when I declare that I am sitting in the chair, there is a habitual identification of the body. The body is sitting in the chair. I say, I am sitting in the chair. The wise person says, I am sitting in the body. That's the only difference. That's a big difference. That's called viveka buddhi. Where in the mind there is separation between the self and non-self. And therefore, the king does not perform any action. All actions take place in his presence. All actions are performed by his prime minister, by his architect, by his prince, by his servants. So the wise person knows I am the indweller of the body. All karma is performed by the mind or intellect. The kartatvam, bhoktritvam, all of this is the body-mind sense complex. Seeing, hearing, thinking, touching, tasting, all this belongs to the mind, intellect, sense organs. While all the activities are taking place, he says, Naiva kinchit karomi, I do not do anything. There's only difference between a wise and otherwise person, that's all. Makes a lot of difference. So, says there Madhusudan Saraswati, Dehi, Deha Bhinna Atmadarshi. When you see the Atma, the self is Bhinna, is different from the body. Pravasiva Paragehe. Like a traveler who is a guest in somebody's home, Paragehe, in the home of someone else. Tat puja paribhavadebhi aprahrushyan avishidan. So when I am a guest in somebody's home, it does not matter to me what happens to the home, what happens to various things there, I am unconnected with that. Home is decorated, I don't become decorated. Somebody's home. So when I am a guest, how I am completely detached from everything that's happening there, I don't identify. When I am in my home, things are different. So here the example of a traveler who is a guest in somebody's home is given as to how, in spite of eating, doing all activities that he does in his own home, he doesn't have identification that this is my home, this is my furniture, my chair, my plate, my things. That doesn't happen to him because he is very clear that I am a traveler, I am a guest. That's the example that Madhusudan Saraswati gives here. The wise person is a guest in this home, in this body. And therefore, tat puja paribhavadebihi. When puja is done, when someone worships this person, he knows who is worshipped. When ordinary person is worshipped, he says, I am worshipped, and then he is affected by that. He feels very happy, elevated, proud. I am insulted, paribhava. So really speaking, the worship, insult, praise, censure, honor, dishonor, all of these take place only at the level of the body, at the city, upadhi, the costume. This one is very clear that everything happens at the level of the role. Even though I am acting as a beggar, I am not beggar. There somebody may give some generous gift to the beggar. Somebody may insult him. Honor, dishonor, puja, paribhav, all these things happen. How the act is unaffected by that because there is no identification there. There is separation. It's called viveka. He is dwelling in he is not the costume. He is a wearer of the costume. Here is not the home, he is the indweller of the body, he is the indweller of the body. He is not the costume of the body, he is the wearer of the costume. When that distinction is clear, he remains unaffected by what treatment is shown to this body. Aprahushyan avishidan na prahushet priyam prapta. Later Lord Krishna will say, no dvijet prapya cha priyam. Na prahushet priyam prapya. He attains priyam, something desirable. There is no harsha. There is no reaction of elation. No dvijet prapya cha priyam. When a priya comes, undesirable thing comes, there is no reaction of depression or unhappiness, sadness. Sthira buddhira sammudha brahmavid brahmani sthitah. Sthira buddhi. We will discuss that verse later. So, navadvare pure dehi aste. So, when you ask him, dehe ase iti pratyupapadyate, for him he says, I am sitting in the body. Whereas the other person says, I am sitting in the chair. That's the difference. So, kva aste? Where does he say? Katham aste? How do you live? Then the second part of the second line says, naiva kurvan karayan. Naiva kurvan, not doing anything. That's the present participle. Naiva kurvan, not doing anything. Even when various activities are taking place at the level of body, speech, mind, all those are taking place. Pashyan, shrunvan, sprashan, jigran, seeing, hearing, talking, thinking, touching, it's all taking place. Naiva kurvan, he does not do anything. It's very clear that all the actions are taking place at the level of organs of action, organs of perception, the mind, the prana. I don't do anything. Naiva kurvan. Na karayan. Nor do we prompt anybody to perform the action. Sometimes we don't perform action, but we prompt somebody. Like Lord Krishna. Before coming to the battlefield, he said that I will not wield any weapon, I will not fight the battle, I won't do anything. Then what did he do? He said, Arjuna, tasmad yudhyasva bharata. Arjuna, may you perform your duty, fight this battle. So he doesn't do, but he makes Arjuna do. That is called, so kārayatritvam. Impelling somebody, prompting somebody to do. Here, wise person does not do anything, nor do they prompt anybody to do anything. See, this is said because very often this question arises. When we see actions taking place at the level of organs of perception, seeing, hearing, thinking, talking, touching, etc., our first conclusion is that Atma is performing the action. Keneshitam patiti preshitam manaha. By whose command, by whose desire does the mind perform its activities? The speech performs its activities. Says, no, Atma doesn't do anything. Maybe Atma, the self, the consciousness doesn't do anything, but then he impels him. Oh, he impels the mind, come on, go and think. Come on, eyes, see. Naiva kurvan na karayan. Neither he is talking, nor is he prompting the organ action to talk. Very important. Is it Swami himself may not do anything, the king may not do anything, but he may prompt people, come on, you do this, that, and so forth. No, Atma, naiva kurvan na karayan. Because prompting somebody to also involve the sense of doership. Doesn't do anything, Meaning that he doesn't talk, he doesn't perform any action level of sense organs, nor do he command or order the sense organs of the mind to do anything. They just do by themselves. It is only because of this non-discrimination, says the Atma Buddha, Vyaputeshvindreshvatma Vyapariva Vivekinam Drishyate Breshudhavatsu Dhāvanyavayasāsasi shashi. It's a beautiful example. Drishyate Abreshudhavatsu. When in the winter night there are winter clouds that are moving in the sky, Dhāvanyavayasāsasi. Some child thinks that, Ma, look at this, the moon is running. Whereas the clouds are running. But the running of the cloud is superimposed upon the moon, and the moon is thought to be running. Vyapruteshu, indriyeshu. Similarly also, here all activities are taking place at the level of sense organs in the mind. Atma, Vyapariyava, Avivekinam. People aviveki think that Atma is doing things. Vyapari, performing the Vyapara. When Indriyas are performing the activities, the ignorant person thinks that Atma is performing activities. Just as when the clouds are running, the ignorant think that the moon is running. So that I am doing something or I am making somebody do something also are the notions that are superimposed upon the self, because kartrutvam, karayitrutvam, doing and making someone do, both of these belong to the upadhi, to the body mind sense complex. Naiva kuruvanna karayanna. Neither does anything, nor does he make anyone to do anything. Understand that this is the vision of the wise person. Lord Krishna is not asking us to do something. He doesn't say you don't do anything, you don't prompt. This is not something, the description of Vyavahara. This is a description of the vision of the wise person. The Vyavahara, he may appear to be doing something, or many things. The Vyavahara, he may appear to be prompting others to do, like Lord Krishna is prompting Arjuna to do, Arjuna may be performing actions. So Arjuna kurvan, karoti. Lord Krishna karayati. But that is at the Vyavaharic level. Arjuna is wise and Lord Krishna of course is wise, and Arjuna is neither doing, Lord Krishna is not prompting. So this is not a description of any activity or a Vyavahara. Oh, Swami, you said a wise person doesn't do anything, so I have stopped doing anything. I've stopped telling it. That is not the point. This is a vision that Atma doesn't do anything, it's just in present things take place. That's such a powerful presence that without doing things happen. A question is asked. You say that Atma does not do anything, does not make anyone do anything. So this is a description of a sannyasi. Does it mean that before the wisdom took place, that Atma was doing and making others do? Is it true? And after the knowledge has taken place, Atma has stopped doing things? No. Atma never does, never makes anything do anything. Only that we know this nature of Atma after knowledge, and before that there were notions or misperception about Atma. So therefore that granthi, that notions, the wrong judgment has gone. The viparita buddhi is gone. The false perception is gone. And this is the true nature of Atma. So while describing the wise person, Lord Krishna also is describing nature of the self. Because he abides in the self. And self is nature of peace or happiness. Therefore, he enjoys the tranquility, sukhamaste. In whatever condition the body is, in whatever condition the upadhi is, he is never disturbed from his tranquility and peace. And this is the description of mukti or liberation. So liberation is not in terms of the state of the mind even, or state of the body. It is nothing but the wisdom. Because Atma is nityamukta. The self is ever liberated. If you don't attain liberation, to see that we are liberated. And this description is given. Some questions are asked here. Because to reconcile what Lord Krishna says there with what the Shastra says elsewhere, in an Upanishad called Kaushitaki Upanishad, it said, Eshu hyeva sadhu karma kārayati tam yamebhya lokebhya unninishate eshu asadhu karma kārayati tam yam adho ninishate ityādhi. Very interesting description is given of Atma or Lord. Yam ebhyah lokebhyah unninishite. When the Lord wants to lift this person to higher levels, higher worlds, then the Lord makes him perform virtuous actions. And adho ninishate, when the Lord wants him to fall from his present status to lower heights, then makes this person perform evil actions. So literally the statement seems to say that the Lord makes this person perform virtuous actions or makes him perform the vicious actions. So Lord is karayita. Karayita means what? Makes him perform. So that's what the statement means. Agnyo jantuhu anishoyam atmana sukhadukhayoho ishvara preto gacche swargam va shvabhrameva vaiti. So that was the Shruti. This is the Smruti. Agnyo jantuhu anishoyam. This jantu, this jivatma is ignorant, anisha, helpless. Atmana sukhadukhayoho, helpless with reference to happiness and happiness with own self. Ishvara preto gacche swargam va shvabhrameva va. Is by Ishvara prerana. Ishvara, in fact, propels him either to heaven or hell. He is helpless. So sometimes the Jiva Atma is described as helpless, as controlled, dominated, prompted by Ishvara. Ishvara is the Karayita and Atma is Karta. Bhojayita and Bhokta. Says no, in fact, there is no Kartrutvam, no Karayitritvam, no Bhoktritvam, no Bhojayitritvam in the Atma by nature. And therefore, naiva kurvanna karayan aste. So this is how, this is a description of a wise person or a sannyasi or a free person. The ultimate freedom from all exertion, because that is the nature of the self. That's the nature of you and I. And this is what we are seeking. Even while performing actions and doing a lot of exertion, the purpose is to become free from exertion. Action we may not mind, exertion is what we mind. Stress and strains is what we mind. So Lord Krishna does not describe a wise person as free from action as sukham aste, free from all exertion. Free means anayasaha, effortlessly he remains happy, cheerful, tranquil. And so this is to be attained by knowledge, not as a result of some action. Only perform action in the spirit of yoga to gain a state of mind where this knowledge can take place. Ultimately, it is by knowledge that you gain perfection, because you are perfect. So knowing that I am perfect, knowing that I am free is the attainment of freedom. So this is sannyasa, or renunciation by virtue of knowledge. And this is kind of sannyasa that Lord Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita. So here also in description of sannyasa as elsewhere, This kind of sannyasi was described earlier and will be described later also. The second chapter was called Sthitaprajña. In the third chapter, a couple of verses describing. In the fourth chapter also, a lot of description was there. Here also is there. All in terms of knowledge. So this is the Vidvat Sannyasa, ultimate sannyasa, which is the theme of the Bhagavad Gita. The reason is that the teaching of Bhagavad Gita was necessitated in the context of action or context of renunciation. The Arjuna want to renounce action. The renunciation of non-performance of action is what was interpreted by Arjuna as renunciation. And he thought that performing action is exertion, is conflict, is stresses. And non-performing action would free him from all exertions and sadness. So Lord Krishna is teaching that no, it's not action that creates sadness. Atma is ever free. You can perform action also in such a manner that action itself becomes progressively the means of becoming free from sadness. And the ultimate freedom from sadness comes by knowing that Atma, the self, is ever free. Sukhamaste. He lives happily, dwells happily. So this is the central verse of the 5th chapter. And subsequent verses will describe this wise person in greater detail. That will continue from the next class. Om. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Viśiṣyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Vadarayanam Sutra Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vadvyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.